the choice was made for me. I had no choice. I had no voice then, but I have a voice now. And the people that have done what they've done, it should not have happened. I had no guardian with me. The only person that was with me when I signed the adoption papers was a social worker.
Last week, Sharon McGuigan told us about her adoption story. She was just 15 years old when a man aged 35 took advantage of her. Her family reacted by putting her into the Dunboyne Mother and Baby Home in 1985. Her daughter was born in 1986. She was made leave her behind in Holles Street Hospital, fighting for her life in a special care unit, and Sharon never saw her again. She was made sign adoption papers when she was just 17 years old, with nobody present, only a social worker. We asked the question, how was that even legal? Today is Sharon's story, part 2.
The way that I would describe it is like a zoo. You look after the animals, you feed them, you keep them warm, you shelter them, but you don't give them any affection. You don't give them any counselling. You don't give them any support. So effectively you were being kept warm, you were being fed, you had a roof over your head, but with regards to anything else was none. You didn't get anything before, during or after.
At just 16 years old, Sharon McGuigan was sent to the Dunboyne Mother and Baby Home with no support. So you had no voice?
No voice, no voice. You didn't talk about it, you didn't even give your second name in the Mother and Baby Home. I had a couple of friends in there who would have known my second name, but you didn't normally give your second name. You know, it was people I got friendly with, and I'm still in contact with 2 from that time, but first name only.
And what was your normal day like? Get up in the morning, what time in bed?
You'd have been up about 6, half 6 in the morning, breakfast. They would have had a rota in the kitchen, so you would have had been on the rota maybe to do the breakfast, then somebody else would do the wash up. So that would be different rota every week or whatever. Then you'd go and get changed, you know, dressed. Then you'd go to mass, which I didn't really go very often. Then you had your chores. Mine was, I used to have to sweep and mop the stairs from the very top of the building down to the bottom, which was 3, 4 flights of stairs.
Heavily pregnant?
Heavily pregnant. So everybody had their own chores. Then you would have had your lunch. Like that, you would have had the rota of clean up and cook and that kind of stuff. Then you would have went into kind of like a porta cabin, and you would have had, I don't know if you know, but you get cellophane, and you'd have 4 or 5 cards with envelopes packed into a packet of cellophane. That's what we would have done in the porta cabin. Like, I don't know, Christmas cards, maybe packs of cards or whatever. So you would have done that maybe for an hour, 2 hours. And then maybe that was before lunch, and then after lunch, the afternoon was yours, which you could sit and watch telly, you could go for a walk, you could knit, you could do whatever you wanted, basically in the evening. And then about, I'd say probably about 5 or 6 o'clock would have been tea, which would have consisted maybe of sausage and chip or just, you know, something light, kind of like a banana sandwich or something like that. And you basically would have been in bed, say about 8, 9. No, but you would have had smoker's room, non-smoker's room, where you would have had the television, where you could have watched your soaps or that kind of stuff, or sat and knitted or whatever.
So it was a little bit easier than further back in the mother.
Yes,
they
yes.
were coming into the time.
Yes, yeah.
So when you look at your experience of the mother and baby homes, and then maybe Terry Harrison's or Sheila's or the older people, just a little bit about that.
My experience in it now, I can't fault them in the care and with regards to the chores and stuff like that, because I don't think I got it that bad compared to the Magdalen laundries and mother and baby homes way back, because like I do, you know, I've read the stories, I've seen the stuff. We did not have that. There was no big laundry room. The sheets and all that, there would have been a van would have come and lifted the sheets, and what I heard was they possibly were taken to a Magdalen laundry, because I think there was still Magdalen laundries running at that time. So I think the sheets and stuff like that were taken from us to a Magdalen laundry.
And this was 1986?
86, 85, 86.
But despite being sent away from home, Sharon was happy to be away for Christmas.
I always said, and I remember saying it to my husband, it was the best Christmas I had. There was no alcohol, there was no arguing, there was no fighting. So to me, it was...
See you, Alison, I have to go.
No worries, see you later. Thanks very much for everything.
No problem.
So, to me, it was safe.
For the first time ever, despite being locked up, Sharon also had some freedom.
Me and two other girls. No, there was more of us, but the two I remember. And one of the girls, she was only 15 as well, and we hit it off. And the crowd of us went to Dublin. Now this was Christmas Eve, I think, or the day before Christmas Eve, like madness. And we got on the bus in Dunboyne to Dublin. Had a great day in Dublin. But I think there could have been 5 or 6 of us walking around out to there kind of thing. Thought this was great crack. Missed the bus. We were supposed to be home at a certain time and we were late, and all we could do was laugh. And we got to the door and there was a real strict nun, I can't remember her name, I don't really remember much about her, at us at the door, and all we could do was laugh. So we got in the room, and the nun that collected me, she was all right, and told us that our tea was in the canteen and it's sausage and chip, and don't be doing that again, and kind of laughing. So we were fine,
Sharon suffered a difficult pregnancy towards the end.
And then when I suppose I was maybe 7 months maybe, I developed high blood pressure. So that meant I couldn't do chores. Bed rest, chair, wasn't allowed to do anything at all. So that was fine. That was grand. They didn't push it or anything. We would have been sent to Holles Street. We would have gotten a minibus and gone to Holles Street for checkups. I think it was every Thursday or something. You wouldn't have went every Thursday at the beginning. You maybe went, every 2 weeks or something like that. But as you were coming closer to your time, you probably would have went every week. And then there was as well, we got an allowance, which I don't know where it come from. Every fortnight we went and signed and we got 20 punt a fortnight. Don't know where it came from, don't know how we got it, don't know anything about it.
Did your parents ever send you anything?
No.
So how did your toothbrush and toothpaste and soap and all that work?
The 20 punt, that's what you bought when you needed it.
But you got nothing from your family?
No, no. A lot of it I would have saved up, and there was a wee wool shop there and I would go to knit. I taught myself to knit in there, and I ended up knitting an iron jumper for one of the girls' fathers in there. So that was my escape. I lost myself in the knitting. I just focused on what I was doing, and that was it.
Knitting's a big thing.
Knitting's a big thing.
Sharon remembers the day she went into labour.
Was in the home, felt pains, told the nun. There was another girl going to the hospital, so that meant the minibus was going. So I was put on the minibus to Holles Street. Got to Holles Street, was examined by a nurse. I was put into a room, a box, literally a box with a single bed in the middle of the floor, and told that there was no beds and that I had to stay where I was until a bed become available, or they could get hold of the Dunboyne to get me back, or I went into labour. So, fair enough, I was lying on the bed, petrified. Didn't know what labour was, didn't know anything about it, didn't know what was going to happen, knew absolutely nothing. Must have been a couple hours on that bed, and then the next thing the nurse came in, we've got you a bed. As I got up off the bed, the sheets were covered in blood. So then I was taken down to the labour ward, and I remember walking into the labour ward, this dark room with the lights up above, the bed with the stirrups at the bottom of the bed, and told to lie in the bed. The doctor, who was a man doctor, came over with this big long needle. Didn't tell me what he was going to do. I hadn't a clue. And at that, he broke my waters. I know now that's what he done, but I didn't know then.
You weren't told anything?
No. Then it was, okay, there's a corridor with about 10 cubicles along the wall. I was put into the furthest cubicle, curtains were drawn, and I was left there basically until I was ready to give birth. The nurse might have come in once, maybe twice in the length of time. Now, what seemed like an eternity, it seemed like forever. I don't know how long I was lying there, but it seemed like a long, long time. So then I gave birth to Nicole. Nicole was taken straight away up into intensive care, wasn't breathing properly. I then found myself in the ward, no child, didn't know anything, didn't know where I was, didn't know nothing. A kind nurse came and told me that she was up intensive care, she was fine, and that after I had breakfast, if I wanted, she would take me up to intensive care. So I said yeah. So after breakfast, before that, I rang my mother to tell her. And my mother goes, oh, that's nice, what's the weather like? Didn't ask, how are you? What weight is your child? Did you have a hard time? What'd you call her? I told her then that the nurse had took Polaroid photos, and she told me that if she ever found them photos, she'd burn them. So I knew there was no way them photos could be found, because that was the only link I had. So that was grand. The conversation basically ended then. Then it was, I was taken up to intensive care to see Nicole. And I remember sitting at the side, still in shock that, how did this happen? And then I was taken back down for lunch. And then I got stronger on my feet. So first thing in the morning, I sat in intensive care until somebody called me for lunch. After lunch, I sat in intensive care until somebody called me for tea. After tea, I sat in intensive care until somebody told me it was bedtime. I never left her side. The whole time, I never left her side. And it was the hardest thing to know that that was my little girl, and I wasn't going to see that little girl again. The day that I left the hospital, now I blocked that out for a long, long time until I went to counselling. But I remember sitting in there, dressed in my clothes. There was a girl that was in the mother and baby home in the hospital who took a photograph of me holding her. I never got that photo. I don't know the girl's name. I don't know where she is. I don't know anything about her, because like that, we didn't use second names. So I couldn't give a name. I left that hospital. I didn't remember until counselling saying goodbye. I do now. I remember walking past that window and looking in intensive care and saying goodbye to my little girl. And that was the last time I ever seen her, not knowing where she was. So I suppose that day I numbed. And I numbed for a number of years after that. 20 odd years after that.
But she was in an incubator.
She was in an incubator.
Fighting for her life.
Yeah.
And you had to go.
I had to go. I had to go. And for years, I couldn't remember, knowing my parents wouldn't drive into the city centre, but I could not remember going back to Dunboyne. Couldn't remember. Until 4-5 years ago. The girl that I went to Dublin with, I asked her, did I come back to Dunboyne? And she goes, yes you did, Sharon. And you sobbed your heart out. Nobody could console you. You cried and cried and cried for about 2 days until you were taken home. I don't remember that. Even after her telling me, I don't remember that. That is just a memory, a feeling, I don't know. Then I was collected from the mother and baby home. I don't actually remember walking out the doors of the mother and baby home, but I remember the drive home. And I remember on the road home, stopping at 2 pubs on the way home. And all I wanted to do was go home. Now, it probably would have been only about 8 days, maybe 8, 9, 10 days from I had Nicole at this stage. Got home, sat on the couch in front of the fire, and my sister says to me, are you going to the disco tonight? And I goes, I don't think so. And I just wanted to disappear. literally just wanted to disappear. And I remember then going to bed and lying in the room, and my mother came in drunk, crying to me and saying nothing of worth, anything worth. And I remember that night lying in bed just feeling so empty. And I think it's a feeling I don't think you ever get over. I don't think you ever get over. That is, to me, 20 plus years of depression, of being totally numb, and just getting through each day in a blur. Basically, it was a blur. Every day was a blur. Feeling nothing, seeing nothing. Until one day I went to Scary's workshop, counselling workshop. I went on the Friday and I came home on the Sunday. And I remember going on the Friday. It cost a lot of money, but it was worth every penny. Went on the Friday. There was about 5 in this workshop, and we sat around a room. Everybody told a bit of their story and all, and we went to bed. And it was like, this is a waste of time. This is an absolute waste of time. I remember thinking in bed. So the next morning we got up about 8 o'clock, went, got our breakfast, went into this room. It was totally different the next day. She started talking to one of the girls, maybe got the girl talking for about 2 hours. The girl broke down. But I didn't realise when she was talking to everybody else was triggering something in everybody else, which broke them. So by the time it came round to me, which I'd say was about 7:30, 8 o'clock that night, and I remember she was talking to me and I started telling a bit of my story, and then she says to me, she says, do you remember saying goodbye to your daughter? And I goes, no. And then she goes, just sit and feel that. I sobbed for 45 minutes. I felt that. I seen that. I grieved for that. For 45 minutes, I have never sobbed as hard as I did that day. That night, I went to bed. Was my first night's sleep I'd say I had in all them years. I got up at 6 o'clock the next morning. I walked on the beach in Scary's. I felt the sand. I heard the waves. I seen the birds. For the first time in my life, I was back living. I was back surviving. And I was the survivor. And from then, the counselling, I worked really hard at the counselling. And I suppose I've accepted a lot of things. Yes, I don't have my daughter. But yes, I made the right decision at that time, because I could not have given her the life that she has. And I don't know what life she would have had, me being as young as I was. Going back into the situation that I grew up in was no life for her. And I dread to think what might have happened. So as difficult as the situation is, or was then, I think it was the right decision, even though it wasn't my decision. This was not my choice.
But it should have been your choice, Sharon.
The choice was made for me. I had no choice. I had no voice then, but I have a voice now. And the people that have done what they've done should not have happened. It should not have happened. I had no guardian with me. The only person that was with me when I signed the adoption papers was a social worker.
Counselling?
No. Was not offered counselling. When I left Dunboyne, counselling wasn't mentioned.
You offered legal advice?
No. Nothing. I don't even remember in Holles Street signing papers to... I walked away, left my daughter there. I must have at some stage said to the hospital, can you let me know when she is being released? I got a letter to say that she was released from hospital on the 10th of March into foster care. So that's all I knew.
Did you get yearly updates?
Only if I requested from my social worker. I would have asked for this, that and the other. I remember I did ask for a photograph, and I got a photograph of her when she was 3 months, when she was in foster care. Then I got another photograph when she was about 12.
This photograph in particular struck a chord with Sharon.
When I got that photograph when she was 12, I was 2 weeks before I got married. And I remember opening that, and it was like looking at a mirror image. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe this looks like me. Literally cannot believe. So that was all the communication. I would have hounded the social worker, like, can I give a letter? Can you get me a photo? Can you give me information? I think a lot of it was done underhanded, and I do think that for my case, especially being 17, how is that legal? To sign a paper, is it the case that the social worker is your guardian? I don't think so. I think, you know, like, you're effectively underage going in and sign something that you really don't know what you're signing. You're not told. You're basically told, this is the form, this is what it says, blah, 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 blah. Just sign there in the bottom line. Basically, that's what I was told. I wasn't told to read it.
You weren't given time.
And as I said earlier, like, I wasn't a normal 17-year-old. I was green. I really didn't understand anything like this. So what was read to me in the adoption thing, I believed what was read to me, because I didn't know any different. It's the same as the doctors, the priests, the sisters, the nuns. They're the ones you listen. They know best. They know what they're doing.
You're married now.
Yes.
How has your family been through your trauma?
Well, I'm married 25 years next year. When my children were growing up, I remember when my son was born. When my son was born, he was took off me and took to Drogheda because he wasn't breathing properly. So for the first 5 days, I never seen him. I was in Monaghan, he was in Drogheda. And I remember lying in bed in the hospital thinking, not again, not again. The day that he was brought back from Drogheda, I leapt over about 3 beds to go and take him in my arms. Wouldn't let him out of my sight. So afraid he was going to be taken away. Would hardly let anybody babysit him. Never left him out of my sight. He went everywhere with me. Then, but a year and a half, 2 years, I had my daughter. During that time, as they were growing up, I was going through depression. I was numb. Very hard to hug, give them emotion, give them affection. I gave them the material things. I fed them, I clothed them, I took them to school, I went to parent-teacher meetings, I done their washing, I kept their rooms tidy. I done that. But thankfully, my husband done the emotional, the hugging, that kind of support. So, I suppose my kids are well balanced. They had the best of both worlds. But I suppose I do feel guilty that I didn't give them the hugs and the kisses, but I wasn't able, because I couldn't give it to myself. I couldn't love myself. So it would have took a lot of years now to build up that relationship with my two son and daughter. And I suppose even with regards to my husband, like the affection, I wouldn't be a huggy kissy person. It's getting better. It's getting better. But it's like there's a shield. There's a shield there, and I suppose maybe it's afraid of being hurt. I don't know. But it is getting better. I will come forward and greet somebody by giving them a hug. It's not as alienating as it would have been, but it's still not forthcoming maybe as other people would be, huggy, affectionate. I'm not really that kind, and I know where it's coming from. I know where it's coming from. It's getting better.
Sharon's father has since passed away.
Well, my father died 10 years ago. The relationship with my mother is non-existent. My mother will not acknowledge or accept anything with regards to that. It's like pure denial. I've tried. I have asked her questions out straight, and she'll always bypass the answer, change the subject, or something like that.
Are you angry?
I was. I think it's more frustration, because you're trying to get the answers. And it's like now, it's like, you know what? I'm tired. I know the truth. I know what you did. I know what you said. And I know what you've said lately. And I know what you've done. You have to live with that.
And the father of your child?
No contact.
Did he ever acknowledge what he did?
I do remember telling him the day before, 2 days before I went to Dunboyne, that I was pregnant, and he offered me money for an abortion. And I goes, no, I'm not doing that. Well, I probably couldn't at that stage because I was 5 months anyway, but I didn't know that. And he did. I must have given him the number or something of Dunboyne. He did ring Dunboyne. And I suppose that would have been the naivety in me still having that thing. And I spoke to him on the phone. Then when I come home, I remember...
Sharon did, though, meet the father of her child after she got out of the home.
I seen him and I went over to him and I goes, oh, by the way, I says to him, I says, I have a photograph, I says, of your daughter if you want it. And he goes, oh, sure, I couldn't take that. I don't want that. Sure, how could I bring that home? And then he says to me, can we pick up where we left off? And I goes, no, we can't. And I turned on my heels and I walked away. And it was then I knew this boy didn't care. He didn't care about me. And that was hard. And I was told by my parents that there was no room for another child in the house. And then I'd say maybe a year or so, my mother got pregnant again. So that was another slap in the mouth. But I do remember when I left Dunboyne, I said to myself, when I turn 18, I'm gone. 2 weeks after my 18th birthday, I had a flat in town and I was moved out. And I thought, no, I'm not. Then I suppose I took up with a boyfriend who beat me. So it was just like a vicious circle. And but I suppose the way I felt with the depression, it was like, you deserved it.
You didn't deserve it. Didn't deserve any of that.
No. So then, the night before my 21st, he gave me an awful hiding. And suppose about a week after that, I was living in a flat. And a week after that, I put him out. And it wasn't long after that I met my husband.
And he's lovely.
Yeah. And went out, that was in what, 1990? I worked, the same place I worked. My husband was a van driver, so we knew each other. And he invited me to go to a concert, Charlie Pride. I loved Charlie Pride. So went to the concert and he didn't try to kiss me. He didn't try anything. And I thought, this isn't normal. There's something not right about this. But it felt right. And then, I don't know how it happened then. The girls found out about it at work and there was the slagging and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then he asked me out again. And we went out again. I can't remember where it was now. I think it was for a meal or something. And he gave me a peck on the cheek at the end of the night. And he didn't push it. And then, I don't know, it just kind of developed like that. And then I got pregnant, was it 92? With my son. And I was too afraid to tell him because I didn't know what he was going to say. So we went to a concert, Francis Black. But he stood by me and moved in and we had Dean. And then in 96 then we had my daughter. When she was a year and a half, we got married. And I remember my father telling him when I was expecting my son, and he said to me, it was in a pub, and he says, I met my mother for coffee that day and told her, and she says, well, you need to tell your father. And we marched down to the pub to tell him. And we, at the pub, and I told him, and he says to me, you're going to have an abortion. And I goes, no, I'm not. And he goes, you're going to have it adopted. I said, I'm not going through that again. And he goes, well, you're not having it. And I go, yeah, I am. And then he goes, you're getting married. I goes, no, I'm not. And I stood my ground where I got the strength from to argue, but I suppose I'd been out of home at this stage, so that was that. And then I had my son, and then I had my daughter, and they never really acknowledged them until the day I got married. You know, and it was like, these are your grandchildren. They never done anything, you know, don't take it out on them. So I suppose with the relationship with them, my children don't have the relationship with their grandparents. I suppose maybe I'm at a stage now, I know where she is. I know what she's at. And it's more than what I had a number of years ago. I live in hope. Yes, there is a day she will want to meet. We will never have a mother and daughter relationship. I accept that. But I would like to think I had the relationship of a friend of some sort. I think with regards to the mother and baby, there is questions that I need answered. The right information. With regards to my stay there, I was there from 25th of November 1985 and I left but the 28th of February 1986. The files from the mother and baby home are about 4 pages for that length of time. I suppose anger maybe is a strong word, of the cover-up, the hidden, the secretiveness, all of that with regards. We were the ones in the home. We are entitled to our files. We are entitled. That's part of our history.
And the truth.
And the truth. The truth has not been told. And the truth has not been told. And my story that I have told has been the truth. It's my life. It happened to me, and it's not something I am going to forget in a hurry.